You go to facebook.com/Stacy Norton defeats Ken. Either the delegates are tired of their representative being in the news every other day for corruption, or they're not. Either they want a conservative or they don't.
Don't fall asleep in the snow, come up from below.
Welcome back to the Liberty Lineup Radio Show. This is Ben McClintock of DefendingUtah.org. And you are on K-Talk Radio, AM 630, K-Talk.com, with the Liberty Lineup, the Naked Truth segment, where we think right and wrong, not right and left. Thank you to our sponsor, Patriot Mobile, the cell phone service for conservatives. You actually get to choose where it goes. So we are, before we went to the break, we were talking to Chris Kimball, one of the Liberty Mom hosts every Wednesday here on the Liberty Lineup, who is also running for office. Last week we had a couple of candidates running for office on the show, and we're going to have another candidate on here right now coming up real quick. But just wanted to let you know, as a little bit of a disclaimer here, candidates on our show are not candidates that we're necessarily endorsing one way or the other.
We're not Breitbart or The Blaze or anybody else that pitches for their
candidates. And so we are going to have people on so that way you have the opportunity as voters to be able to kind of hear more from the candidates. And we've been lucky enough to have a lot of the challengers of the incumbents on our show. I think that's good. I think the incumbents need to have the challengers kind of have their voices heard a little bit louder, because incumbents, they've got just a little bit more of an advantage than a lot of the challengers do. And so we do put maybe a preference towards them, but that's not an endorsement. So just kind of as a disclaimer.
Well, the incumbents can come on, but they typically hate this show.
Lie
their
about
works
it.
are darkness.
Exactly.
And, it makes them uncomfortable.
Well, and that's a good thing. We hope that the people that are working works of darkness are uncomfortable when they come to talk to us. Right now, we are speaking with a candidate for actually the 47th district, which is Representative Ken Ivory's district, and we're speaking with the challenger, Stacy Norton. Thanks for coming on the air. You're with Ben McClintock.
Thanks for having me. It's a great opportunity to finally be heard. As you said, challengers don't get much respect. They want $500 from me for a table at the convention. So, and that's the starting table. So it's hard to get a message out.
That's a good way to make some money for the party and shut people out that are your average Joes. I know I couldn't fork over $500 to put up a table.
Right, and I'm not collecting donations. I'm not running a big money campaign like Ivory is. I don't have the money, and I'm not interested in playing those kind of games. Either the delegates are tired of their representative being in the news every other day for corruption, or they're not. Okay, either they want a conservative or they don't.
And
right.
You don't need money.
One thing that Ken Ivory put out on his Facebook page was that George Soros was out to get him, and so he needed money to make sure he was reelected. Are you funded by George Soros?
Well, I didn't see that, but if Ivory invoked the scare tactic of using the name of George Soros, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, Ivory, his whole operation is based on shallowness and uninformed voters. He needs uninformed voters. You look at Ivory's record and you're just disgusted. And he talks a lot about how the Tribune is out to get him. Yeah, they are. But you know what? Liberals have an incentive sometimes to get things right, and sometimes, like a stopped clock, liberals are right. And when it comes to the Tribune going after Ivory, they're right. They are just right. They have every motivation to be right.
Well, it seems like
really
the Tribune's almost like a false opposition to him, because they're telling him to get in line to make sure and get us at Defending Utah in line, because we're hijacking his movement, and they're the legitimate lands movement that the Salt Lake Tribune recognizes.
Well, the Tribune doesn't like Ivory for the wrong reason, but the facts that they've been putting out in especially the most recent news story where Ivory used his state email account when he said he didn't to solicit donations to a group that he pays himself from, there's a lot of people in the district that smell the stench of that, and they're tired of that. And that's why I think if I go to a primary, I win hands down. Okay, I really do. Even though this guy's an entrenched incumbent, if it goes to a primary, I believe I win.
So what led you to, what kind of started, I guess, what's your background in politics, like what's your philosophy, and what led you to want to challenge this incumbent that is touted as being the conservatives' conservative.
Well, I thought about it for over a year. Really, what finally was the straw that broke the camel's back is when Ivory voted against the most modest tax cut I've ever seen. I went to a recent town hall meeting of his as well, and I brought up tax cuts, and I was amazed how him and his crew poo-pooed it so fast. He's not a conservative. He's not interested in tax cuts in any way, shape, matter, or form.
So he votes for tax increases, and he votes against tax cuts.
Well, some of the Herbert tax increases, Ivory voted against those. There's been 4 Herbert tax increases in
But
the
he
whole
voted
Herbert
for the
regime.
gas tax increase, and he also voted for the $75 million property tax increase.
Well, there's some that Ivory voted for and some that he didn't. So there's a big mixed record with him. But the final analysis is Ivory does not go out of his way in any way to reduce the size and scope of state government or reduce our taxes.
Right.
He just doesn't. He doesn't care. He's busy traveling around the nation giving a spiel so he can get money to a shadowy group that he pays himself from.
That sums it up, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
So that's what got you started, and kind of waking up to, or kind of seeing what was his maybe his rhetoric didn't match his actions.
Hey Stacy. Here's something you could do. You need to go knock on Ken Ivory's door wearing a GoPro camera and ask him to vote for you. And then put that video online, send it around West Jordan, and you'll drum up attention.
Well, I've gone to his house. A few months ago, I went to his house to specifically ask him to sponsor a specific tax cut. I think it's obscene that we talk all about cleaning the air, and then the DMV taxes to renew or register a motorcycle are obscenely high. And I specifically asked him to sponsor another tax cut in the past. I'd like to see our utility sales taxes at least be at the level of the general sales tax. They're actually over 10% if you add up your state and local sales tax on your natural gas bill or your electricity bill. And he seemed somewhat sympathetic to that, but he sponsored nothing in the way of tax cuts this last session. Absolutely nothing.
Well,
and I have...
On his doorstep, he'll be sympathetic to all your concerns, and he'll give you a hug. I've seen that from my representative. He was handing out cookies at the caucus, so all the good citizens will remember to vote for that guy again. He gave me a cookie from Costco.
And his reason for voting against that modest tax decrease was very interesting. You want to tell us about that?
Well, it was a modest tax cut on the sales tax. It was proposed by a Democrat, and it was the hygiene supplies tax cut. And I thought it was very misogynistic how I mentioned it online, and Ivory showed up and left a post saying, "What is that, the tampon bill?" And I said, well, it would have cut taxes on a lot more than just that, Ken, but your misogyny just came through loud and clear. And he helped kill that bill in committee.
So he votes against tax cuts for women.
You hear that, ladies and gentlemen? Ken Ivory's against women's rights. Ken Ivory's against women's health. Ken Ivory hates women.
We don't want to be silly about that, but it's kind of interesting that that's really what it comes down to.
You could feel the misogyny in his attitude when I merely brought it up. But the attitude is against all tax cuts, and that came through loud and clear at the last town hall meeting where I was there and brought up tax cuts. He just doesn't care about that. He cares about enriching himself. That's what matters most. And you know what? I hate to bring up stuff like this, but his wife said something in a public place. That's why I bring this up. I was at a I don't know if you want to call it a town hall meeting, but it was at a park last year that Ken Ivory put on. And his wife brought this up in a public area and said it in public, not to a lot of people, but it was said in public. And she remarked how she wishes her husband was around more. And she's tired of all the crap and all the traveling.
We wish her husband was around more, too.
At home.
At home.
Yeah.
Away.
We'd like him to go
out of the picture.
Maybe him and his wife can go on a mission. Wouldn't that be nice?
Might save their souls.
But
I thought this...
You're running as a Republican, so you're trying to meet. You're going to meet him in the convention.
Right. I'll have to give a speech to the delegates because it'll be the delegates that decide whether there's a primary or not.
Is he collecting signatures?
No.
So if you win in the at the convention, then you could really unseat him there.
well, I can beat him outright at the convention, or I can force it into a primary.
Right.
So I think a lot of the delegates, I've noticed a lot of delegates have a really strong love for Ivory because they think he's Superman, because he is a very convincing salesman. If you've ever been to his spiel meetings, which is what they are, where any town hall meeting he puts on, it's just a meeting for him to put the same spiel over and over again, which most of it, what he says related to getting our lands back, is true. That's what makes him problematic, and I've told him that. I told him that to his face at the last time I saw him at West Jordan City Hall. Most of what he says is absolutely true. It's the fact that he solicits donations from around the country. He's not representing the district. He's too busy representing himself, and he's paying his wife from the same shadowy group. He's not part of the American Lands Council anymore. He's part of another group. I can't remember the name of it. He mentioned it because I asked him if he was still part of the ALC.
He was removed as the head of that, and now is doing another group that goes around speaking about the lands issues.
Well, yeah, I think what's happened is, people that stink like he does, when people are on to them, they have to shift things around, and he's shifting the shells around now, and he's now part of another group. So I suspect that this new group he's part of will also be paying him and possibly his wife. But we're on to him, and so he's on the run, and this is just getting tiresome.
So we're speaking with Stacy Norton, who is running for House Legislative District 47, and as a Republican running against incumbent Ken Ivory. Again, that's Stacy Norton. We've got a few more minutes. How can people find out about you if they're interested in what you're saying and learn more about your campaign?
Well, if they want to see the bills I will sponsor and co-sponsor as a member of the legislature, they can go to Facebook, facebook.com, and I have a page. I'm running a bare bones campaign here, so I just started a Facebook page. It's called, you go to facebook.com/Stacy Norton Defeats Ken. Okay? And
one word.
Right. And I've got pinned at the top, legislation I will sponsor, very pro-life. I think we need to get a constitutional amendment establishing that at least preborn children with heartbeats are citizens of the state of Utah. They're legal persons. We should be starting with that. I haven't seen Ken sponsor any such thing. I haven't seen him sponsor any tax cuts. He doesn't sponsor pro-Second Amendment legislation, even though I brought it up at a convention years ago to him. Oh, I got to tell this story, too. I brought it up how he needs to repeal relevant portions of the state constitution that deal with the deal over public lands with the feds. And he got so mad at me because I was suggesting that. It's the common sense place to start. He talks a lot about the deal between Utah and the feds.
Right.
Well, we can alter that deal by changing the state constitution. I brought that up. He got so mad at me because he knows
like
it's the
people
common
bringing
sense.
up the facts here. We've got 1 minute left. And so this is something that we've been talking about at defendingutah.org, exposing Ken Ivory and how his lands legislation isn't really about getting the lands back. It's about enriching him and his friends. It's about creating a regional bureaucracy, and now they're actually arming it. And so I'd like to take a little bit of credit in getting him out of the ALC, but hopefully we can get other people to do that. And they can check out Stacy Norton on Facebook. Stacy Norton to defeat Ken Ivory for Legislative House District 47 is his page. And we've appreciate you coming on, Stacy.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, have a good one. And we are almost out of time here on the Liberty lineup. We had a caller that wanted to give Stacy props. Apologize we couldn't get to that. But we want to let everybody know right here that tomorrow we've got the Hollywood Y Guy. Our host on that show is actually out for surgery. And so Sherilyn Eager will be subbing in for him and talking more about what the cleanup up in Oregon and all the other hot topics of the day. This is affecting us right here in Utah. And we hope that you will stop being hearers of the word only, but start being doers, as the Apostle James said. Special thanks to our sponsor, Patriot Mobile, the cell phone service that supports conservative candidates and causes. Go to patriotmobile.com for more information and mention the Liberty Lineup radio show. You can find out more how to be an activist at defendingutah.org. We have a table coming up next week at the Rod Meldrum Book of Mormon event. We hope you'll check us out there and find out more about what we're doing and how we can actually make a difference, because it's those enemies of freedom that want us to think that there's nothing that can be done about it, and that's nothing could be further from the truth, and we need to stand for truth.